Challenge your potential and the sky's the limit. Join me, Emily Ibbott, in a diary to empower. From a starting point of a love for dance, my life has evolved, but along the way, I've learned so much in how we develop, learn and grow from those around us to elevate us even further on. Be inspired and be open to learn, and no limit will ever exist. Come along with me on my own journey in personal development, but with guests who have empowered me and are still doing so in my own journey. Hey, and welcome back. Really excited to speak on today's topics. And today I have Harry here with me.
Hi, guys.
And thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And really interesting as well with, I think, the bodybuilding industry, fitness industry. You connect with so many other coaches, and the world of Instagram is literally our jobs. So it was really interesting how we ended up coming onto this topic and getting you on board, and obviously you have your own podcast as well. So yeah, really excited about this, and probably a great topic for where the bodybuilding season currently is.
Yes.
So I guess to start with, do you want to kind of tell people what it is you do and where you're at the moment?
It's always a very interesting question. What do I do? Because technically you could say it's a made-up occupation. But no, I would say if we go back to the roots, I started off as an online personal trainer. And then at the same time I was doing on the gym floor. And I quickly came to discover that it just wasn't really my niche.
What, on the gym floor?
Yeah. As much as I enjoyed the clients that I was working with at the time, I just quickly realized that I wanted to branch out. I wanted to experience more of the competitive side of it, working with athletes pretty much from day one. So I started off as a PT, and then in 2019, I fully moved over to online, which was the worst timing because it was just before COVID, literally just before COVID. So I had to take that gamble. Do I go full throttle with it? I took the gamble, and it's obviously paid off now. So if we fast forward to 2025, I've now been online client. Sorry.
Coach.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
All the time.
That's right. And how did you going full-time online coach with your own bodybuilding go? Because that kind of, I guess, coincided.
So, yeah, that coincided with it because that's where it all stemmed from. When I got into fitness training, I wanted to be a competitive athlete myself. So in 2017, that's when I first competed.
That was your first show?
That was my first ever show. It just goes to show my age. That's almost a decade ago now. It's closer to a decade than it was 5 years. So yeah, that just goes to show my age. And obviously, background was I was brought up with training fitness from a very early age because my dad was into bodybuilding as well.
Cool. Okay, amazing.
So yeah, was always surrounded by that. And then obviously that's where I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. But at the same time, I didn't really know too much about the competitive side of it.
Yeah.
So I just kind of followed suit with what was going around to other people.
And it's very different, and it's not where it is now in terms of online as well.
Well, I could say because back then there wasn't Instagram, there wasn't Snapchat, Facebook was only just up and coming at the time.
Everything in front of us.
All you had was magazines, forums, that sort of stuff, or just word of mouth. From other people's experiences.
And I guess depending on the gym you're in or the environment you're around, like I said, obviously with your dad being in in that, probably helped a lot to understand it, but you're just probably trying to gauge it off of so many different things, whereas now we've got pretty much
it's more streamlined now. Obviously everyone's got that accessibility to Instagram. Even people have their educational portals, so you can sign up to them. You've got these podcast channels. You're inundated nowadays with the information out there, which can be both good and bad. There's pros and cons to it because sometimes you can be overwhelmed with the amount of information. So it's just about finding the right people to listen to and take their advice from. And the best way you can go about that is looking at mileage and experience. Those who can back it up with their portfolio, with their own personal experiences and endeavors. And then if they're an online coach, PT, look at their results.
Yeah. And also what those results and the backing knowledge come together. It comes hand in hand, because I know, a lot of people say to me, you've got these major coaches in the industry, and, everyone kind of steers to know like them, even if they're new into coming to the bodybuilding, they'll steer. But actually, it's like, actually get to know your environment properly as well. I mean, a lot of people say to me, who's your coach? And I'm like, you won't know. But, actually, in terms of the journey and the results that you get for yourself from, and having that understanding each step of the way, which will tell you everything you need to. So pretty cool. And you've had a big season already.
Yes.
And for people out there, I think I have explained it before, but as a fresh pair of eyes, the bodybuilding season goes on from like, I'd say April to October.
Yeah.
There tends to be kind of two parts to the season.
It depends. If you're looking at like the amateur ranks, yes, it's April to October, but then pro ranks can go April all the way through to December. Pretty much continuous.
I think the only break is probably that very, very start of the year, I guess.
Like January, February time.
Yeah. Where everyone's kind of calming down and figuring out how the year's going to go.
Getting over Christmas.
Yeah. So you have had a lot of athletes, and you are mainly a competitive coach, or do you have a lot of lifestyle as well?
I have a handful of lifestyle clients that I'm still working with, but I haven't actually announced this publicly yet, but we have a coach.
Amazing.
Yes, a coach that I have working underneath me, but we're kind of just like testing the waters at the moment.
Yeah.
I don't want to say he's completely inexperienced, but he doesn't have the level of expertise at this level. So we're just trialing that with a few lifestyle clients. So then hopefully I can get to a point where I can move them over to him, and then I can just deal specifically with the competitive athletes.
Amazing. And I think it is something to kind of highlight, and lifestyle to competitive is so different.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people look to the competitive side and almost, I don't want to say glorifies, but they look, wow, like, oh, these people make it look so easy, and it's just this and it's just that, and I've done similar things. And of course there are similarities, but when you actually get to the nitty gritty side of the competing, it's very, very different. And also where the mindsets are at and how that builds.
Yeah, 100% I agree.
And it's interesting. And I love seeing the transition of people getting curious as well. Like, I don't know whether you've had lifestyle clients that have then actually become competitive clients.
Yeah. So I would say now, obviously, after 8 years of being a coach and establishing myself and getting my name out there, I've had the ability to be a little bit more selective with the people that I'm working with. So nowadays, some of them, they might still be a little bit on the edge, contemplating whether they want to compete or not. So we'll start off with like the curiosity side of it. What does it entail, the competitive side? So then you can start off with maybe doing photo shoots.
Yeah.
Then you can gradually build up to stepping on stage.
Yeah.
So it's taking a lifestyle client and then transferring them over to that competitive mindset.
Definitely. And I've said on a lot of podcasts, doing a shoot is such a fantastic way to be able to test the waters of your own, like of yourself. And I always say to people, I never actually wanted to compete, but through my photo shoots of how much I actually came away from them loving every single second and every part of that process, actually changed the outlook I had of bodybuilding. Because I remember at the time being like, no, it's too extreme, it's too unhealthy, which it is. But, actually in how much I look at it now is completely different. So today is going to be really interesting, and I've not spoken about this as a topic, but being a coach on show day. Now, this isn't something that I can necessarily relate to because I have not had any competitive clients and it's not in my current scope. But obviously I can relate from the client side of view, and it's quite a big thing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot that goes into it, and I don't even want to imagine kind of the thoughts and feelings, let alone the actual things that you need to kind of do for that client. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yes.
So yeah, how did you kind of decide that going into the competitive side and sort of taking all of that on board? Because it's not an easy job.
In terms of
like being a coach, like choosing to have competitive clients, taking them to their show day, sort of where that kind of goes.
I would say that was That would probably stem back to 2021. That's probably where my coaching really started to take off at that competitive level. And
Post the main chunk of COVID.
100%. And so I tried to, just for some context, I tried to compete during COVID, and my prep was on and off 4 times in total. So I pulled out in the end around November time. And then fast forward to 2021, I decided, right, that's it. I'm going full throttle. I'm doing my season. And at the same time, I had a load of inquiries, a big influx of inquiries. I think everyone was desperate.
From your season?
No, just in general. I was just about to say, I think it's because everyone was so desperate to get on stage, because obviously there was that long period of no shows being accessible. So that sparked a lot of interest from a lot of people, whether they were seasonal athletes or just first timers. So I kind of juggled the two at the same time. And it got to a point where I was getting more elation out of seeing them go through their prep than my own prep.
Wow. And that must have been quite weird to come to terms with.
Yeah. So one of my shows in particular, I was about 4 weeks out from my preset show that I was supposed to do. So I was within proximity of being ready. So I thought, right, let's test the waters, collect some data with the mock peak week, which we can speak about today. And so I'd done that show, but it also fell around the same weekend as one of my athletes who was competing. So I thought, right, this will be interesting. I can do a show the same day as one of my clients competing. So it's about me doing my show as well as coaching them for their show day. It was a big challenge. I stepped on stage, came off.
And you coached yourself, right?
At the time, I had a friend. It was a friend of mine who was kind of he was up and coming as well as an aspiring coach. So I gave him the full reins, but we kind of worked in a partnership.
Yeah.
So.
And that probably helped.
Yeah, it just alleviated a lot of that stress and pressure. So then I could put more time and attention into my athlete. And when I got off stage, I came fourth there, and it was a meh feeling. Didn't really get much out of it, apart from, stepping on stage and doing the routine. The one thing that I loved the most about competing was routine. I've got a background in dance. So
love it.
If I could do competing just for the routine and nothing else, I would happily do that. So that was probably the only thing that I enjoyed about that day. But when my athlete, Sean, Wellness, she stepped on stage, she won her class. And as soon as I saw her win, take that gold trophy, stand in the middle for her individual pictures, I was just so over the moon. And that for me was okay, that just put it all into perspective. I get more out of this from them competing, working behind the scenes, rather than me being on stage myself.
Amazing.
So in that moment, that's when I thought, right, I'm going to hang up the trunks, and I'm now going to be a full-time online coach.
And was that the last time you competed?
That was 2021, and then 2023 my last time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Then, crazy. Prepped. That was the last time. Yeah, I can't believe I prepped in 23. Everyone's like, it's ages ago, and I'm like, it feels like yesterday at the same time. And it just developed from there, and then you took on more people, and it's mapping out that season. Because have you ever had more than one client on one show day? How do you try and navigate and take that on board?
The most I've had on one show weekend, because it was across 2 days.
Okay.
We had 5 in total.
Wow.
On stage. That was a story in and of itself.
Okay.
Depends on how much time you have. That could be an entire episode on its own.
Yeah.
But that was the most I've had across one weekend.
And was that male, female,
that
different?
Was 3 females and 2 males.
2 males.
And then most recently this season, I've had the maximum 3 in one day.
Yeah.
So it can be difficult, but I think ultimately it all comes down to preparation. You have to know what you're doing with every single individual, and you have to have that preparation in place beforehand. So this is where, I don't know if you want to go off on any tangents, but this is where it comes down to running mock peak weeks and things like that. So like I was saying with my show, I do this with a lot of my athletes. So we're just trying to collect as much data as we can. So when it comes to the official peak week and show day in particular, it's not a case of guesswork.
It's calmer. That is probably the biggest thing that people, or you hear so much about, and obviously in my own experience, you don't want to be guessing on your peak week, which is inevitably especially if you only got one show, that's major, so you don't really want to be playing guesswork. I mean, I have so many people who don't necessarily know the ins and outs of you and I, but so many people are do you do this? Do you do that? Because they hear that from some superhero film. They drink a load of water and do a load of soda or whatever. And it's like, whoa, like there are principles, but no, we don't just play around with things just to see what kind of comes up,
The difficulty of it is there is 1,000 ways to skin a cat. So 100%. When it comes to peak week, there are 1,000 ways to peak somebody.
Yeah.
But you have to understand everybody is individualistic. So you have to work out what works best for that individual. And the best way to do that is collect that data beforehand.
Yeah, definitely. And if you have got multiple athletes, what do you, or even just, okay, an athlete on show day, what is it that you kind of, what do you think and feel sort of in the lead up? Obviously, like we said, peak week is a whole topic in itself. And for those of you who are like, why do they keep saying peak week? Peak week is essentially the week in the lead up to your show. Your show will typically be on the Saturday or Sunday. And it's kind of those protocols that you put in place leading up to that day. So when we talk about peak week protocols, that's what we're kind of speaking about, which is fascinating. And I know people do find it very, very interesting, but it's quite a lot being a coach on show day. I mean, I know what I rely on in my coach, and there is everything laid out, and you have to be there, like, you know, anything that I could possibly need, even if it's at God knows what time of the morning of show day. Like, show day is long. Yes. And, you know, you've got to basically, I guess, as a coach, be asleep after your athlete and awake before your athlete.
100%, yeah. And then sometimes you might even still have other check-ins that you have to do with other athletes.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got to the point now where I've got a few international clients as well. So
Amazing.
There's that time difference that you have to also take into account. So yeah, you are literally up all the time. You're probably getting a minimum like 2 hours sleep a day. But
not ideal.
Show weekend, yeah, that's where you have to be on point, and you have to be very meticulous and very intricate with what you're doing.
Yeah.
More so from the perspective of knowing that the athlete knows what they're doing, because it can be all well and good as you as the coach knowing, right, this is what we're going to do. But if you don't know how to articulate that across with that verbal fluidity to the athletes, then they're going to struggle. So they're going to be panicking. They're not going to know what to do. And again, off on a tangent here, but cortisol can be one of the biggest killers of a physique. And that can be spiked by stress. Yeah. So you need to not only just know what you're doing, but you need to make sure that the client themselves know exactly precisely. Yes.
As hell. And, you know, there's a lot at the moment that throws around with cortisol levels and stuff, but what we're not obviously talking about huge stress levels, but all those little things that you can panic about, or not knowing what's going on, or, you know, not knowing when you're on, or not knowing how you go about this, can just add up so much. And it is literally on show day to be, well, as an athlete, as calm as possible, because nerves are going to be there regardless.
I think another thing to add to your listeners is a lot of people might think, right, it's so nuanced that there's probably not going to be a drastic change within a very short period of time from that window of in the morning when they wake up to when they step on stage. But the body is so sensitive at that point that they're very susceptible to a drastic change. Yeah. So yes, it could be a minor little thing that you're stressing about. Let's say you can't find your car keys because you need to head down to the venue. But that stress there, or if your partner is stressing you out, whatever it may be, that can drastically change the physique.
And even I've sort of, you know, I find that I had one of my best friends, and for one of my, a couple of my shows, and she was just there. She was like, not asking me questions. She was just there. Basically, I say to people, she was my bitch. Like, if I needed my water to be held, if I needed to hand her this, if I needed her to do this, it's really helpful. But also, if you're someone going to a friend's show, you know, I found that before my show, I didn't really want to speak to many people before I'd went on stage, because I was like, I've never done this before. And that was my first time a show. So I just kind of, the only person I'm caring about right now and concentrating on is my coach, and, you know, my friend who I was with, just to kind of be there. But it literally is being as calm as possible.
Yeah, I think it's that perspective of, you have to realize the way that you're approaching this is like a job. You have to approach it like a job. You've been dieting for 16 plus weeks. All the sacrifice that you've put into that prep, the endless hours of cardio, the dieting, the suffering, not joining in with social events, just to ruin that all for the show day because you want to mess around with your friends or you want to socialize with other people. It's like you have that time afterwards. Get on stage, do what you need to do, and as soon as you're 100%. Off stage, that's when you can have fun with your friends, have fun with your loved ones, and all that sort of stuff.
And then celebrate.
Then
that's
celebrate.
Fine. That's not going anywhere. And in turn of that, obviously the things you think about and the things you do as an athlete, the food, obviously you have certain food protocols, there'll be certain water protocols, there'll be certain salt protocols, and again, the list is endless. And do you map that out so your client knows exactly what's doing and you're there? Do you try and go to all of your client shows?
So I'll approach that in a 2-part question in terms of water manipulation, sodium manipulation, and the rest of it. I like to be as intricate as I can, so I will track absolutely everything, but most of this would have been standardized from day one. So when I'm referring to day one, I'm talking about the beginning of the prep. So if we're 24 weeks out, all of that would be standardized, and then it'll just be very small tweaks down the line.
And then you're not playing with anything, right? I remember my coach, he was like, same sodium all the way through each meal. What I've given you, don't change anything. Nope. And it's just keeping that there, and the same with water.
And it sounds extreme, but the expression that I like to use is the more consistent you can keep these things, the greater ability you have at identifying a problem. So if there is a problem that arises, you know how to identify the problem because everything has been so meticulous to the T that one little thing that's out, you can pinpoint, right, okay, that's the problem there. Now we know how to rectify it. Rather than, again, guessworking and thinking, what's happened? Why has this happened?
Which is why, as a competitive client, all of those things are to a T, and it is extreme. That's the difference in comparison to lifestyle, where you're looking at completely different variables. But it is, and even with lifestyle, it's why, as a coach, you say consistency is so important. And I had past couple of weeks, my body's been doing somersaults, not so much now, but my coach said, we have a very, very good coaching relationship, but he said, have you changed? I said, no, everything has been to a T. So every potential reasoning I was giving it to it, a lot of it came down to hormones. As we know, obviously being female, they like to throw a few spanners in the works, and even digestion. There was any possibility that I thought of the reasoning for that. And you just have to, if you know that everything else is the same, you know that they're not the problem.
So with my female athletes as well, there's been moments where we won't go into too much detail, but obviously with the female population, you have your menstrual cycle. And more often than not, you tend to see that the menstrual cycle will suppress. Obviously, during those harsh deficits, the body's obviously going into that survival instinct. So things like reproduction is not a priority. So that will normally suppress, and that's when you get amenorrhea. But sometimes it can still occur. So then you have to understand, right, what medical intervention can you use that's transient in that moment? Because there will be some instances where females may have their period the day of their show. And I have had that experience before. So again, you have to
that is nothing that you can necessarily control.
Can't control for that. But if you can control as many variables as you can, collecting that data, sometimes you can be preemptive. And you can say, right, there's a high proclivity of you potentially coming on. So we've got this in place. So again, for the listeners, they might be listening to this thinking, right, it's a lot going into it. Maybe some of that's a little bit irrelevant, but the more data that you can collect.
There is nothing that's irrelevant. And
you're covering every angle. So you're leaving no stone unturned.
And it's why, as a coach, the level of expectation for detail that you get from your athletes is so important. And it really, really is. I mean, even I say to my coach, me being on the pill, when that break is, what's going on, why that's the case. Obviously, we don't know that that's going to stop. It might stop, it might not. Okay, what is going into play in these next few weeks that are going to be understanding of that?
And that's where I think it's fundamentally important that you have that rapport and that relationship with that client. That coach-client relationship has to be to the point where the client can trust the coach.
Yeah.
And if there is that trust element there, then you have a greater ability that you can open up, be more transparent, and talk.
And you have to be.
Talk about these things comfortably.
Yeah, 100%.
Especially if you're a female and you're working with a male coach.
Yeah, definitely. And even to the point of digestion, you got to talk about it. We got to know what's going on. Like,
I've got some stories. I don't know how far we can go if we have to keep this PG.
But it is important to highlight. And, it is like, I even tell, all of my team, I'm like, these are things that we need to know what's going on. Yes. Because actually that is such an important factor.
Yeah.
And it really is. And I say to my coach, TMI, but also not. Yeah. You've got to speak about these things.
I think it again depends on what's on the line. So it's that cost of investment.
Yeah.
If you're working with an athlete who's doing their first ever show, yes, you still want to make sure that you're covering every single angle and you're ticking off every box. But you probably don't have to be as, let's say, overcomplicating everything and tracking every single variable. But if you've got somebody who's going for a pro card, on the other hand, that's where you might have to start tracking those 1%.
Yeah. 100%. And I find that even
dependent.
Yeah, it is. And I find that even my prep where I am now to where I was in 23, that 1% is everything. And he has really been intricately like these things. So I was an example when I got my new sort of food drop for this week. I had to go out and find on a mission macadamia nuts. And he gave me every reason why. As I said, I'm really struggling to find them.
See, us as coaches, we just perceive that you've got this infinite supply. So if we say we're going to make this change, it's just going to be there.
Yeah,
I get it all the time.
I was ready to go and hunt for them, but I also was like, right, why is this the case?
Yeah.
And especially as an athlete, ask why. If you're not sure why, there will be a reason, or there should be a reason as to why that is such a specific. And that again is where you can tell from experience and your coach and
the coach
those details
also should encourage it.
Yeah.
They should be encouraging that challenge.
Yeah.
You should be encouraging your clients and athletes to question you. If you're going to do something and you're a little bit uncomfortable with it, don't just go ahead and do it just because they're the claimed professional.
Yeah.
Ask them why. What's the rationale behind it? I'm
such a question, like I would question everything,
it.
But it's because I feel like such a nerd.
Yeah. I love that part of it. Having the answer to those questions.
Yeah.
Also, it's because it's building that trust again
and
with
confidence.
The coach.
Like,
clients.
that as a client, okay, my coach is gonna be that. And also if anyone random, like, friends and family, when they question what I'm doing, I can give them a very, very, very confident answer as to why, and then they don't say anything.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, the more concise you are in how you say things to people, the less they shut up. The more they shut up, sorry.
I think that's more of a generational approach now with coaching.
Yeah,
as obviously there's more exposure on social media, so people are being challenged a lot more, and I encourage it. Yeah. But the second part of your question was, do I try to attend the shows? I try to attend as many shows as I can. Obviously, there's only one of me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I can have multiple athletes competing on the same weekend at different shows in different federations in different locations, sometimes even different countries. So, I try to be at as many shows as I can. The ones that I like to prioritize are either my first timer athletes or those who are going for like a pro card.
Yeah.
So if there's more of a stake on the line, then obviously I'll prioritize them. Otherwise, it'll always be first timers because these are the people who've never done this before.
No idea. It's so scary.
You need to cherish,
in a good way.
You need to cherish these athletes, as like they're your own child.
And also, they'll never ever forget it.
No.
Like, I will never forget me doing press ups on the side of my stage. He's literally like bent down in my ear, like just giving me every single word of wisdom. And in that moment, I didn't care about anything else. I was literally just focusing on what I was doing. And it's things like that can actually really stick with you, because especially there's a lot going on. There's other athletes you're competing against. Your mind can start going
you have to be that calm voice.
Yeah, and there's no faffing about, and it has to be, blinkers on, it is only you and your coach is the focus.
That's why I'm a bit of a control freak in that element. It's like that parent role where I like to make sure that I'm controlling every single variable, because the expression I've always said from day one is, if I have control over everything in terms of I'm making their meals for them on show day and doing their tan, if I can do their tan, I like to actually do the tan myself. If there is any problems or if they don't get the placing they expected, I can then say the responsibility is on me. rather than you messed up because you didn't get that meal in, or you didn't put the right amount of salt on, or you didn't drink X amount of water. If I'm always on point, then again, it eliminates that stress from their perspective. They can just chill, they can put their feet up, do whatever they want to do, and then you can just run around for them.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to do. Because then I know as well, I've got that confirmation of that's what's done, that's what's been done, that's gone in. So every box has been ticked.
Yeah. And I even think that, I mean, the tan is impressive, but it is important, and also to have that eye more so. So even if you don't do the tan, knowing that you're like there to be like, okay, is everything there? Because obviously, especially as a first timer, you have no clue, and the tanning experience as a first timer is whole nother thing, which I have again spoken about, and people literally question me on it every time. They're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's an interesting experience, but you just kind of don't really give a fuck by that point. And you know, you do want that eye for especially on stage, the lights, like, you know, you want to know that glaze is right before you go on stage, and you've just got that kind of go ahead nod from your coach as well. And I guess as a more personal thing for you, how do you feel like the night before show, the lead up, the peak week, like those emotions, especially as someone, there's a lot going for that person, that athlete. So it's quite a bit of pressure. Obviously, I know
more
that
is your job. Their family's there as well. May I just add, yes.
But that's quite something, and I think no one really speaks about. Like, we all know that, you know, well, as an athlete, you know, there's a lot riding on it, and what you're doing, and you've got friends and family and social media and everything, all of those factors into it. But actually, no one ever talks about how the coach is feeling. Yeah. You only see these obviously celebratory posts and obviously all the elation afterwards, which is epic, and to see that. But yeah, it's quite interesting to delve into the details.
I appreciate you asking. After myself. Yeah, there is obviously a lot of pressure that goes behind it as well, because the expression again is this is a rich man's sports. There's a lot that has to go into a prep. If you look at the trunks and the amount of food they have to eat, and their gym membership and all the rest of it, the bikinis, the tans, the jewelry, the list goes on. So if you look at just the investment in the coach, there's a lot of money. Coaches, they're fairly cheap, but at the same time, they can be very expensive. Yeah. So there's that pressure of they've invested their hard-earned money into you to achieve a certain outcome. And then when it comes to that show day, you've promised them this expectation. So you have to make sure that you've done everything right to the best of your ability. But I would say truthfully, in the past, 2021, 2022, my stress levels have been through the roof when it was the night before show. This year in particular has been the complete opposite. And it's because
is the approach, confidence,
but I would say more so competence in terms of my ability to collect that data and know exactly what we need to do. Yeah. And the approach to my peaking has drastically changed this year. Rather than following the textbook of, you know, depletion at the beginning of the week, and then carb loading 2 days beforehand, and then trying to drive up diuresis, and for the listeners, that's like just trying to pull that water out so they come in drier on show day. I've come away from these stereotype protocols, and I'm now just listening and like visually looking at the physique and just responding to the physique in front of me. So it's eliminated a lot of stress on my end. So now I can just say, right, this we know works, and rather than overcomplicating it, we keep it very, very simple. And sometimes I've questioned myself, thinking, right, we should have been doing X, Y, and Z, but we're not. We're just doing something very simple, like we're eating baseline calories, which would be their rest day meal plan. They'll still be doing cardio, they'll still be doing training, which, as you probably know from experience, that sometimes can be the complete opposite of what you would want to be doing a couple of days out. So the approach has been drastically different, and it's because I'm just going off of what's in front of me rather than trying to think.
And you might have an athlete that is a bit more textbook.
Yes.
You know, and you might have someone, like you say, is so simple. You're actually like, okay.
Yeah.
But this is working.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's massively dropped off a load of stress the day before, because I now have the physique in front of me where it needs to be. It's landed on the mark. So almost to the point where the predictable outcome is so on point. I know exactly how they're going to wake up. And this year in particular, I've been doing this little thing where I've been guessing their body weight set points, and I've always been pretty much on point. Because we've ran those multiple mock peak weeks beforehand,
100%.
we know exactly how they're going to respond the next day. And whenever I wake up and it's like, okay, right, your body weight's going to be 80 kilos and they're 80.1. It's okay, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I know that's where I expected you to be. That is where you are. So we're in a good spot. And therefore, I don't need to stress. Yeah. Because sometimes you can get into your own head, especially as the coach, because you're thinking, or even if you want to think about show day itself, when you're at the show, you're going to see other coaches with their athletes and you're going to be seeing what they're doing and you're going to start comparing and thinking, well, they're doing X, Y, and Z. Should I be doing X, Y, and Z? So you start over-analysing it.
Because as an athlete, you're doing that with the other athletes.
Right.
So it's really interesting to hear that, well, not that makes sense when you say it out loud, but you'd never think, like, as an athlete to your coach is thinking the exact same thing. But actually, it's then blocking out that noise and then honing back into actually what you're doing.
Yeah. So I've had this year in particular, a few of my athletes saying, that athlete over there is doing this and this athlete over there is doing that and they're starting to pump up now. Should I do that? And we're like, we've got our plan. And the way that I like to do it is we reverse engineer that timeline. So that usually will be done at the beginning of the week. So on the Monday, if they're looking at competing on the Sunday, on the Monday, we start reverse engineering the timeline relative to the estimated time they'll be on stage. So let's say, for context, they're going to be on stage about 1 p.m. The way that we can figure this out is looking at the running order of the federation, and then you can get a rough idea.
Mission in some federations.
Yes.
And you don't truly know. And again, that's something out of not control.
But you always have to err on the side of caution. And
where those previous categories are. Okay, that's when we're going to be backstage. This is where we need to know. We don't know what exact.
You have to budget for that time. Yeah. So then if you need to rejig the timeline, you can do so. But I'd reverse engineer that timeline. Let's say they're on stage at 1 p.m. Generally speaking, you'll have a 3-hour window where you can't put any food in. So obviously digestion you have to take into account for. If you're looking at gastric transit time, that can be anywhere from 3 to 5 hours. So if you're eating any food backstage, that's doing absolutely nothing apart from just occupying GI space. And that's going to cause bloating, discomfort. And like if you're bikini, you want a tight waist, you're going to have the complete opposite. So you have that 3-hour window of not putting any food in. And then from the moment you want them to be awake, you can work out, right, this is how many meals we need to put in. This is how much water we need to put in, how much sodium we need to put in. That's what I've been doing this year in particular with the mock peak weeks. And then we basically just replicate that in the official peak week. So we're now at a point where I can almost tell them beforehand, this is exactly what we're going to be doing. And also the predictable outcome in terms of body weight set point. Again, you can get into the nuance. We'll start tracking the weight in the AM, PM, and then you have more data. And then the more consistency you have with that data, you start accumulating the trends and patterns, and then the more consistent you are with that, the more competent you're going to be with it. So 100%. That's, I would say, drastically changed the way that I am the night before. So I'm now able to actually sleep the night before of a show. But there still is always going to be that stress element of what if it doesn't go to plan, or what if you get this freak athlete who comes on show day and my athlete is expecting that gold trophy and they only get second place, or they don't get that podium. You've got that pressure of how are they going to receive that? How are they going to react to it? If, like I said, if they've got their family there, how are they going to react to the situation? Because it's not only the expectation from the athlete themselves, it's the expectation of the family, friends, partner, and even people on social media.
Yeah. And I always say this, and the only person who can really, truly keep your head screwed on is your coach. Because, like, you're always, no matter what individual you are, you're going to get the gas up from your friends, from your family, because they think you are absolute gold dust, which you are.
It's that unconditional love.
Yeah, you're going to get that, and you're going to get that hype. And also, for most people, you're going to be the one of very, very few competing in that gym. So therefore, everyone in that gym is going to look at you thinking, wow.
Amazing.
They compliment after compliment. Oh, you're going to smash it. You're going to do this. Which, yes, is fantastic. But you also have to, as a coach, set that expectation, because you have no clue who's going to get on that stage. And that is something, probably the only factor you have no control over whatsoever. And I always say to people, John's very, very good at,
good work, keep going. Like, he will be there to gas me up when it needs to happen. But I also think as a coach, it's so important to keep that calm and to keep you on check rather than just hype, because actually sometimes that's not always helpful, even when you're going to get it anyway.
No, generally speaking, I think obviously it's all person dependent.
Yeah, it is. It is.
What works best for that individual. But most of the time for my athletes, we'll just be cracking jokes. We'll just be talking about maybe the night before. Recently, I was at a show in Leicester, and the Airbnb that we stayed at had a pool table. So we was up until like 10 o'clock at night just playing pool. So the day of the show, we're just talking about, who won the game and, I'm going to beat you later on tonight. And other people, it might be a scroll through Instagram, look at some funny reels. Or
It's having those relaxed points. 100%.
But I think obviously at the end of the day, we're also human as coaches. So you will have your moments where you will start to overanalyze, especially as you're getting closer and closer to them stepping on stage. So if you do have those moments, I think that's where you just have to step out of the room. I've had many moments where I thought to myself, I think I've done something wrong here. This probably isn't the best look, but you can't say to the athlete, you don't look good, you look flat, or you look watery, whatever it may be. Maybe that's where you need to re-strategize what you need to do in that moment, but go out, collect your thoughts, compose yourself, think about what you want to do, then come back with that level-headed approach and mindset, and then go, right, this is what we're going to do. So you have that authority there. But
because that's what they're going to look up to, like in any moment, no matter what's going on.
Because as soon as you start stressing out, it's going to rub off on them, and they're going to start stressing out. And then, as I said earlier, their body is so prone to that stress response. So you deal with the stress because it doesn't matter how you look as the coach. Because you're not stepping on stage, you're not taking off your t-shirt.
Take on the stress.
Exactly.
Definitely. And it's so amazing to go into this level of detail with how show days run. And I say to people, being a competitive coach shouldn't be taken lightly. Like so many people say to me, it is not in my scope right now. And because I know the level of detail that I would want to bring, the confidence, everything that I know, the data, I don't have that experience yet either. So, it's such a different world, but it's really interesting to delve into it from a coach's point of view.
There's a multitude of roles that you have to take on as the coach. It's not just a nutritionist and telling them, right, you need to eat X, Y, and Z. There's so much more to it. You have to be the counselor, the psychiatrist, their best friends, their parents, whatever it may be. You have to be all of those figures to the person to help them in those specific moments. And obviously on top of that, what they don't see behind the closed doors is you as the coach have your own personal life. So if you're in a relationship, if you've got a family, you've also got to juggle that as well. So as you were saying, sometimes you have to stay up with that client until the very last meal and the very last check-in, because we didn't mention, but sometimes in peak week, you might have multiple check-ins throughout the day. I don't know if you have this.
I remember doing AM and PM. He'd ask me for some, not necessarily full check-in pictures during the day, but he would be like, okay, after this meal, I need to see this. And people forget that. Like, it's not just, now we're doing everyday weigh-ins all the way leading up to show, and we're 5 weeks out. We introduced that last week, but it's understanding and taking into account every single bit of data that you possibly can, especially as a female with variables that you can't sometimes always control, even if you don't necessarily have a cycle or a cycle that arrives. There are still hormones, there's still things going on. So it is really important. And like you say, peak week, you've got AM, you've got PM, you want visuals. And also you have to find the lighting. Like you want, okay, on those pump and training sessions, what are the visuals from that? What are we actually looking at? Which is, and the quality of that. People underestimate the quality of the videos and things that you need to send your coach. It's so important. And there's so much that happens, which is why as an athlete, I try and, it's managing that work as well in between that. So, I like to take some time off during peak week, because as soon as those feet need to go up, but it's hard sometimes managing that. And then there's so much that goes into it that you have to do.
And I think it's easy done, where athletes they have this perception of the coach is only there working with that one individual.
And it's just not the case.
And we could be working with multiple athletes across, multiple shows over multiple weekends. So
all that
there's
data.
multiple check-ins. So if you've obviously got experience yourself and you're working with a coach and what you're doing, that coach might be doing that with 5, 10 plus other clients across that day. So as much as you can be on point in terms of your check-ins, all that sort of stuff, it massively helps out the coach.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing more infuriating than when you say, right, I need you to check in at this time. And then 2 hours later, they check in. But you've already moved on with your day. You're now moving on to your next check-in, or you've got admin work to do, or you've got chores to do around the house. If you've got a family, you've got to sort out the kids. So you have to understand that you have to have that relationship with your coach where you're doing your part,
and that's the expectation.
You do have that responsibility as the client, that you need to do X, Y, and Z. That's been asked from you, from your coach. And the better you can execute those variables, then the better results the coach can get for you. Yeah,
which is why as well, when you get your check-in feedback, take it all in. Do you have questions? Ask there, ask then, because then the answer, you can go and sort it out. Like, if you need to get something different from the shop, or, I never forget I sent a check-in photo. This was a few years back when I was doing a shoot with John. And I sent him a check-in photos. He said, you need 20 grams more peanut butter. And I was like, so I was like, okay, like you kind of have to have everything accessible to you. Like, you don't know what protocols are going to be thrown. Like, even though at the moment I've not got, many carbohydrates in my system, actually, I still need to have them accessible because something might change in an instant,
So what I like to do with my athletes is on show day, they've got a timetable of exactly everything they need to bring with them. And again, we'll try and map that all out so we know precisely this is the time that you're due to wake up. This is when the first meal's going in, so on and so forth. And on the to-do list section, it'll tell them what they need to bring. So rice cakes, jam, peanut butter, all the standard show day
all
foods.
The good stuff.
But more often than not, I'll often get the question, do I need 2 jars of jam, and do I need 4 or 5 packs of rice cakes? And I always say it's always better to be looking at it than looking for it.
Shall I bring extra chicken?
Just always bring it.
Just have everything.
Because
I was camping for like 10 days.
But again, you don't want that stress. I've had it before where I've had to run off to a shop because one of my clients didn't have enough squares bars. So I had to run off and frantically panicking, trying to find this shop to get the squares bars, to go back, give it to them. And they had maybe a 2-hour window before they were due on stage. And it was pouring down with rain outside. So
they can't go out.
As to the stress, they can't go out because of their tan. So
and it is interesting, and things can change in an instant. And like I say, even if as an athlete you are packing for days, just take everything with you. Like, you can never, like, if you've got something and you need it, it's there is nothing. I mean, obviously, yes, there are shops nearby or whatever, but you
always,
don't want those variables even you don't even want to think, because I'm also like, well, I don't want you to go away because I need you here because I need and it is just so important. So I highlight, I mean, we'd laugh about it, but obviously it's important to,
you can laugh afterwards. After the show done, then you can laugh about it, but during, it's not so much a laughing matter.
Which ties in to finish off with like that initial stage results, post show, like the celebration, and obviously you can't always control the other athletes that are getting on stage, but it's always a celebration when the prep has been such a success, because our success isn't, obviously, I know, just measured in a successful prep isn't just measured in the results, because obviously you can't always control that. But how, that must be next level feeling, because you have had incredible results from your season so far this year.
Yes.
And that must feel absolutely amazing. And I'm sure you've had celebratory meals with them, and how do you kind of give them that flexibility as well afterwards? Because some of them probably have shows and things. What's your approach on that to finish off?
Context dependent. If they do have another show coming up, I've had some athletes who will be doing multiple weekends. So in those scenarios, it'll just be like a very small, simple, controlled meal, maybe like a Wagamama's or Nando's.
Can't go wrong.
You can't go wrong. And normally you can always find a Wagamama's or Nando's within proximity. But if it's somebody who's done, let's say, with their season, then that evening, I always just say, just relax, chill, unwind. If you're with your family, if you're with your partner, just give back. That's the time for the athlete to give back to their friends and loved ones, because they've been supporting you throughout that entire duration. So it's time to give back to them, be present with them, enjoy a good meal. And then usually the next day they've got their plan in place.
Yeah.
But if they want some flexibility, that'll be incorporated into the plan. But usually the day after, as soon as they wake up, they've got some sense of navigation and direction of where they're going. Because the analogous that I like to use here is when you're in the confounds of prep, it's like being in prison. And then as soon as you're released after, let's say, 20 years in prison, society's changed. You don't know how to cope with it. It's the same with prep. You've been stuck in this one little bubble.
And you're probably the first person they message when they wake up.
Yep. 20 weeks of this, same routine every single day of cardio and check-ins, and the communication levels start dropping off. That goalpost has been moved drastically. So the goal has changed. And sometimes that's where you get the show day blues, and they start panicking. They start feeling depressed and sad, and they don't know what to do anymore. They don't have any purpose anymore with what is the point of following this meal plan? What's the point in doing this training session? Because I have no show anymore. So that's where you do need that accountability. So you have to still be...
the best thing you can do as an athlete, just stay in communication with your coach.
You still need
they are your rock.
Yes.
Afterwards,
100%.
Just as much as peak, as show day, as the prep itself.
I still try to keep communication as frequent as possible, almost like 3 times a week.
Yeah.
So usually it'll be like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then they've got that plan in place. But then, like I said, if they say to me, we've got a social event coming up, or I would like to go out with my partner, or I would like to go out with my best friend, then that's fine. Let's control it. This is what we're going to do.
What's going on around it? What's this? 100%.
So then you have that balance.
Yeah. And obviously post-show is a whole topic in itself.
Again, yes.
But to highlight, it is really tough. And I've said about it to like everyone I see, post-show can be tenfold harder than the actual prep itself. And no one ever believes you until they're in it and they're doing it.
It can actually be very problematic.
And there's so many things.
Yeah. So it's not just a case of, still being accountable to your goal and being resilient with, X, Y, and Z. It's also taking care of your health, because there can be some pathophysiological implications that can occur with edema and water retention, and that can stem from the amount of food that you're eating, and if you're not controlling your fluid intake and things like that. So we're not just saying it because we want you to still be accountable and still look hard and lean because it looks good for social media. It's not about that. It's about
actually
your health.
the opposite.
It's because it's all about your health, and that's the priority.
And also just keeping that head screwed on again.
Yeah.
Because it is a bit of a whirlwind, like you say. I don't know whether I would compare it to prison, but I understand that. I understand what you're saying, and it is such a whirlwind when you have to learn how to shift that focus. Mm-hmm. Utilizing your coach afterwards, and obviously celebrating the prep, because it's a very small percentage of people that actually complete their preps.
Yeah.
So it's impressive in itself.
That is the win in and of itself for most people, especially when you go to these shows and unfortunately there's only one in your class and it's yourself, and you win by default. But I always say, you don't know what happened with the other athletes. There could have been 10 people in your class and 9 people dropped out because they couldn't do it. They couldn't endure the endeavors of prep. Yeah. And you managed to make it all the way until the end. So that in and of itself is a massive win. Yeah. Anything else on top of that is the bonus. Yeah. So again, it's all about perspective.
100%. 100%. And if anyone out there from the whole shebang that we have spoken about today, obviously, again, we can go off on many different tangents. And if you have any questions on specifics of peak week, like we could go on, or post show or anything like that, or anything towards the details that we've spoken about, you can ask away, ask more questions, or if you want Harry to come back on, I'm sure that we can arrange that. And thank you so much for coming on. It's been so nice to go into some of these details, which I think people forget about. I think people look at the bodybuilding stage and it's like, yeah, you're a coach, you're a client, you do this, and then you get on stage and it's all amazing. Actually, the level of detail and what actually goes into it is extreme. It is an extreme sport.
But it's fun.
Not your average, but it's the best.
Yes, I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, absolutely. How can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram, trained by warrior_. Obviously, I've got my own podcast channel if they want to listen to that. That's Warrior Unfiltered podcast on Spotify and YouTube. But mainly it'll be Instagram.
Instagram is the place to be. And I will obviously tag your profile and on videos and everything as well. So if anyone from either side wants to contact either of us, they can. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
And hopefully we will see you on the next episode.
100%.
A big thank you for joining me on my channel and tuning in. Find me on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, Amazon and YouTube at Diary to Empower. Follow me on Instagram, m_power.fitness and TikTok, m.ibert. See you on the next episode.